Before I introduce the panelists, I would like to frame the discussion a little bit so we all have a shared understanding of what we are talking about. And my first question is actually to you, because is anybody here who knows that picture? Do you actually see a picture? Anthony?
It's us. We're on that little.
It's us. Very, very good. Yes, it's us. This is the little dot. This is the first picture of our solar system, which was taken in 1990 from the Voyager 1. It was 6 billion kilometers away. And this is the Earth. And the picture has a name. It's called the pale blue dot. And the reason why it's called pale blue dot, you see here, that picture was taken today, a week ago, so last Tuesday. And yeah, this is why it's called blue dot. And it's very pretty, but it is very sick. And if we want to understand why it is so sick, we can look at that illustration, which I call the shifting nozzle. And you see two system conditions, planetary boundaries, reflect the ecological system conditions and the social SDGs, the social system conditions. And Stefan Schaltecker this morning in the keynote basically addressed this because he said on the left-hand side, it is not enough anymore to reduce unsustainability. But this is what we are doing, and why it is not sufficient. You just need to open a newspaper or go on an online channel and you will see every day plenty of messages that provide evidence on what is going on that left-hand side where this is closing. So Stefan mentioned positive impact. So if we use that and we relate it to the right-hand side of the nozzle, this would be positive impact. So it's increasing, it's improving on the planetary boundaries and the social SDGs. And also when you open newspapers, you find a lot of news on this one. So it's not all risk and bad, and it's a lot of very promising and hopeful technologies and examples from different countries. And so it looks like it's not a lack of technology or a lack of concepts or a lack of ideas. It looks more it's a lack of leadership, maybe, strategic leadership. So that is the context I would like to use for that discussion. And what you see here are 5 people, almost intrigued to say 5 medical doctors that treat the patients you saw before, which was so blue. And they have been doing that for many, many years. This is why I called that a pioneer panel, because it's not only ABC. ABC stands for academic and business and consulting, yeah? Academic, business, consulting, but it's ABC Pioneer. And you see the pioneering dates. I put these dates on that sheet to introduce the different panelists. So one pioneering date is 1972, Club of Rome, the limits of growth. And we have from the Club of Rome, International Club of Rome Executive Committee, we have Petra Künkel, who is also leading the Collective Leadership Institute, which is based in Berlin, I think. It's a local, right? You're based here. Then next panelist, Rüdiger-Röhrig, 1989 was the kind of founding date of the Natural Step, which is a framework of strongly sustainable, strategic sustainable management. And Rüdiger-Röhrig represents and manages the Natural Step Germany and is also managing director of Sustainable Growth Associates. Next date, 1994, Mission Zero, Ray Anderson, kind of awakening and great, bold initiative, which I learned is almost accomplished. So it's for you, it's already checked. So you're on the positive impact side now, not on the neutral one. And we have Jean van Artel, who is head of sustainable development of Interface EMEA. Then it was really hard to find a date for Stefan Schaltecker because there are so many pioneering dates. But I thought maybe the first global MBA program. So the first MBA program on sustainability management worldwide. That's quite a pioneering event, and it's a strong link to practice if it's an MBA. So yeah, I don't need to say much more. I think with the keynote and everybody knows Professor Schaltecker. And then we have the Boston Consulting Group, Alexander Meyer zum Felde. Why is that a pioneering consulting firm? Because the big consulting firms, they all do some stuff on sustainability. But especially in this group, I think many of you may have quoted the MIT BCG studies, and they were kicked off in 2009. And it's one of the rare longitudinal management-oriented studies on sustainability. I think the last one, 2017. So that would be my pioneering date for Alex. So short introduction, some context. Let's get back to the nozzle, and I join you. And we're going to start with some questions. And my first question is to Petra. Because Club of Rome, 50th anniversary, come on, I think was the title of the book. So a lot of effort and a lot of energy in driving positive impact, along with many other NGOs. We cannot mention all here. But if we look at that nozzle, it doesn't seem that it does not cure the patient, but the patient gets even sicker, more sick. What is the problem? Why is this not? What is locking the system? What is the issue?
I can only guess, as many other people too, because the problem probably doesn't exist. It's just a conglomeration of different problems. But what is interesting is that when the Club of Rome published in 1972 the report Limits to Growth, I think it went around the world. It got a lot of resistance, but it also inspired a lot of people like me. I think I was at school and heard about the report and thought, wow. Yeah, so I was quite fascinated with that. What is so interesting, if we think about why didn't people listen, then I would say this is a wrong question asked, and I have told many of my colleagues at the Club of Rome, don't think because you say something that other people listen. The question is how we actually start to operate differently. And if one thing that really prevented impact, in my view, not only the Club of Rome's impact, but kind of many sustainability practitioners or academics' impact, is competition. We've been working in competition so far again and again and again, and also businesses work in competition. And that is over. We can't afford competition anymore. We need to work in collaborative networks, and we need to have a mindset of networks. So the report Come On is interesting, that was published actually written by 37 members of the Club of Rome. That was absolutely amazing. And there was a breakthrough in that way that it really showed that there are different approaches and we can make a difference. And there were more Club of Rome reports, like the last one that I wrote on stewarding sustainability transformations is really about the how to do things in multi-stakeholder collaboration, how to actually implement the SDGs. So I think the competition and the thinking that I'm the only one who has the solution is a key element of a lack of impact.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that links very well to my follow-up question to Stefan, actually. 30 years of research, not your research, but research in that field. If we look at management concepts, we come across integrated sustainability, embedded sustainability, flourishing, thriving, conscious capitalism, inclusive capitalism, caring economy, business cases for sustainability, social entrepreneurship, and even sustainable business models. So there seems to be no lack of concepts, but there seems to be a lack of impact. Is there a scientific reason for that, or what's your perspective on that? Is it the competition of concepts, like a little bit what Petra said, or do you see it different?
Yeah, I also think here that there's no clear and one answer, but I would say as sustainability is a very complex, vexed conglomeration of problems that overtaxes all of us. It overtaxes people who don't deal a lot with it even more. And whenever people are overtaxed, you tend to look for simplifications and simple solutions. And then that's a very good basis usually for ideology. And one thing which I observe is that with regard to sustainability, we still have, and I think we used to have it even more, that it tended to be an ideological question. Do you belong to those or do you belong to these? I had this question very often 20 years ago, but very recently again. Well, are you now an economist or are you about sustainability? Are you here or are you there? And ideology doesn't help then to find factual solutions. It's then more about to whom do you belong, and then it gets a kind of war. And I think that we in research, in academia, we tend to reflect these things in complex ways, to develop lots of tools, but this is for people who think about it and who think about it in a rational manner. But for people who are overtaxed with the complexity, with the dynamics, with the vexed and wicked character of sustainability issues, they maybe don't want to think that rational about it. They want to know to which group they shall belong. And then you don't find solutions. Then it gets a kind, well, it gets ideological, it gets religious. And I still think we find that in politics, we find that in organizations, and I think it's very, very difficult, very often, to get the issues down to a factual level and to get away. I mean, what is one of the key arguments of Trump against climate change? There was this report on the economic consequences of climate change for the United States. And what was his answer? I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And this had the weight of hundreds of scientists thinking about the issue. And you can hear that very often with regard to climate change too. People say, I don't believe it's there. And I think that shows the problem, and then we can develop as many tools as we want to. That doesn't solve this issue. So we have to somehow bridge between this finding easy solutions, taking away the fright, to be afraid of those issues. And people are just often also afraid that sustainability might endanger everything they have. So it's a very partial solution or very partial answer. I'm fully aware of that, but it's wicked.
It was a very difficult and broad question, of course. But I think one of the believers was Ray Anderson at Interface, and so he believed that the natural step in a certain framework, the FSSD framework for strategic sustainable development, could help him. And so addressing both of you, because he's presenting the framework and here the application, if you want so. I was in consulting myself for a long time, and what I learned in consulting is that if you have a management method that is out in the market for almost 30 years, and it's not mainstream, it seems to me like a failed method, because other methods like EVA, balanced scorecards, ENSOF matrix, Porter, whatever, they had a very different life cycle. And sometimes I'm surprised that at conferences or at some papers, if we look at best practice examples for sustainable companies, you find Patagonia and you find Interface, and everybody knows them. But if you're on a practitioner conference with people not dealing with sustainability, but CFOs or strategy, or I can tell you from my own experience, most of them have never heard of interface, and a lot of them never heard of Patagonia. So that framework and these best practices, my question now to you. Why is it not mainstream? Because it's obviously you're great fans of this. You applied it very successfully. If you read it, it's very impressive. So you would almost expect any company to have that in place as a standard model, but it's not. What is your explanation for that? May we start with the framework and then with the application? Okay.
Well, I learned about the sorry for that. I learned about the framework in 2012. That was the first time I saw that, and I thought, why did I have to turn 47 to learn about it? Why is it not being taught, not just in your in a scientific environment, but at school? So I basically asked myself the same question, and I think it boils down to maybe just the examples that you just gave, because that change happened at the end of the day because individuals decided to change. And I unfortunately never met Ray. I read his books, and he's describing this spare and the just moment, where I think the reason is he was economy driven. He describes that he was afraid of losing a customer, so it was business driven. And if you take that then seriously and then looking for advice, you will actually find just the right stuff. So it has been out there, but you have to feel the need, the desire to go for it. And we made the same experience when we're working with clients, just without mentioning the client. As a matter of fact, we would be allowed to do so. But the reason why that it's a chemical company now decided to change course is because they got a new CEO. The CEO was aware of the framework and is now starting to turn around the company. So I think it boils down at the end of the day, and that probably also supports what you just said, is to individuals who embrace change, who are not afraid of change, who want to go for it, who see themselves in the broader context and understand that business success ultimately requires to do whatever you do also in the socio-ecological context. But that's not everybody's taking, or not everyone sees it like that. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, I just want to give credits to Paul Hawken, because he eventually actually inspired Ray with his book, The Ecology of Commerce, and I think that's still the issue today, that we think that ecology and economy can't go together, because anything else, it's just common sense. That's why I think the framework is actually so simple, and that's maybe why you don't see it out that much. We already discussed about that, but a lot of people adapt it, and then they use their own words, because it's actually common sense. Mm-hmm. For us, everybody expected us to go bankrupt back in the 90s, because you couldn't be a successful stock-listed company. And I think we have proven the other way, and we actually experienced that it is smart for business. And I'm not the only one, or we are not the only one experiencing that. There's even scientific research. For example, the model I love best in that is the model of Stuart Hart and Milstein, creating sustainable value, that they say, sustainability is the smartest strategy there is. So there's something in our minds that we are not willing to adapt it or to see that, because we still feel indeed that we are losing something if we go for sustainability. And I think we need to show that you win far more, that there is no lose actually. It's about doing things differently. And it starts with the individual. That's, I think, crucial. And it helps maybe if he or she is the CEO, but for sure, I'm convinced that everyone can make a difference, because, it will pay off.
Okay. Very good. Recently, I had a report from your main competitor. And the title of the report
sounds far more nicer.
Yeah. The title of the report was Superstar Companies, and it was about the companies which had above average profitability. Yeah? It was ranking profitability, and they were labeled superstar. That was a few months ago. So you wonder how, in today's world, looking at that, how can you call it superstar? So my question to you, as a representative of another big consulting firm, that statement, sustainability is the smartest strategy you can have, and maybe even that framework. I don't know whether you're aware of or whether you use it. What's your perspective? You're dealing with clients on that topic on a daily basis. What is your feedback from these key decision makers in large companies on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I agree with that statement. That's why I'm working for the firm I'm working for and not for our competitors. So I would agree that you can't do successful business any longer without looking at sustainability topics. But if you really break it down in the business world, it comes to different questions. Sustainability is not sustainability. I mean, sustainability is a societal concept, yeah? But if you think about the resources, the input factors that you need to, in order to produce goods, in order to produce services, you always need external factors, be it air, you have carbon emissions, be it water as input resource, be it natural resources, metals, non-ferrous metals, and so on as extracting factors. So you're basically using all of these great resources that the planet provides you, not even talking about human, but you don't have to pay for it. So if you think in former models and the way on how society has incentivized in the past producing goods, producing services, one of the key aspects is it still is cost-driven. Whether you believe in it or not, in the end, the companies listed in the stock markets, the investors, all of these stakeholders basically look at financial performance. Now the next question is, how do you tie financial performance to the whole part of sustainability or ecological sustainability, social sustainability? There is a trend and movement towards acknowledging that externalities have a price or come at a cost. So I think to be positive, there's a lot of companies out there having solutions. There's a lot of companies rethinking the way they produce goods, rethinking how they operate their businesses. The problem is right now, they're not incentivized to scale those, and they're not forced to scale those. So the question is, or the element is, if you talk to CEOs, there's a lot of CEOs out there who want to do good. I mean, Paul Polman, one of the examples for Unilever going ahead. There's a lot of other CEOs where once the door is shut, you have very, very different discussions than it seems, yeah? They are actually struggling to scale. They want to scale. There's a lot of fathers, mothers leading in the boardrooms. They actually wonder, what kind of planet do I leave my kids in 20, 30, 40 years? Can I actually leave for my grandchildren a planet where actually I've contributed positively? The problem is they struggle with their incentive schemes. They don't know how to scale those solutions, and they are not supported enough. Yeah, I don't want to take any blame away from business. There's many companies who don't do good, but there's equally enough companies who think about how they can do better. And I think that's part where we need to help them. And I mean, that's part of the excitement in the job of consultancy. You see a lot of different industries. They are struggling with different topics. Climate change is a topic business will not be able to solve. Yes, they are part of the challenge, they will be part of the solution, but it's a societal challenge. Yet all the resource extraction, all the recycling, I mean, who puts those solutions up in front of consumers and in front of politics? And I think that's where collaboration is required. The challenges are too big to solve for a single company. There's very few products, very few services where you actually combine more than 1 or 2 or 3% market share across the world. That's where collaboration is required, and I think that's where we need to help those leaders who want to advance the world really to scale their solutions. And that's where we currently struggle. And admittedly, I think we all are not doing a fair share of that. Politics is not doing a fair share of that. If you look at recent regulation, it's not moving quick enough. We need drastic changes. If you look at consumer behavior, yes, we might all not buy the newest car. We might go on a train ride once in a while. We still go for vacations somewhere far away. Yeah, we still buy the products that have microplastics in them. If you look at the pure figures, we don't help as a collaborate or as a societal effort to really scale those solutions. And that's, on the one hand, where I'm optimistic. Most of the solutions we have, we just need to scale them. We need a different discussion on pricing in externalities, but I'm also scared because I mean, even though I'm not as old as, or I'm not that old, in the last 10 years, yes, it's peaking, it has come up, but I mean, quite honestly, it's not scaling up quick enough. We have another 10, 15 years, depending on whom you believe, to solve the biggest issues of our generation. And right now, we're not scaling it quickly enough.
Can I throw in some spanners here? I just think it is important. It's important to look at the different causes, for lack of impact. But I think I would be really careful. I'm with you. I say, like we have structures in place that prevent us from acting differently. And it has a personal component because we need courageous leaders. That's absolutely right. But I do think, and particularly in this environment, I want to throw the spanner and say we need to name the dragon. And the neoliberal system is a dragon. It was invented for a reason. It was distributed for a reason. We talk about Friedman, we talk about Hayek, we talk about many more people. We talk about the more Polarized society. We talk about the Powell Memorandum in the US. We talk about, if let's say, think about the positive of how the neoliberal narrative kind of emerged in 1947 in Switzerland, then it was probably a good idea to say we need to build on the freedom of people, and we need to make sure that the state isn't too big, isn't too powerful, and that was done for a reason. It was done for a historic reason. But now the dragon actually grew in a way that probably nobody expected, and the dragon is really holding us in place at the moment. So this means that we are operating, or we have an operating system of the global economy, and that goes to every company and every shareholder and every individual and every consumer, that is operating on an assumption that is totally a wrong assumption today, or let's say already since 50 years, it's a wrong assumption. And the assumption is like there are no limits to resources, and certainly there are no limits to growth. And this, of course, so the neoliberal idea and the narrative was built on a different assumption, that there are no limits. And there was kind of political interest, and then there was a dynamic of systems, financial systems, economic systems, kind of lack of level playing field, weak states, kind of states have been made weak for a reason, so that today it's difficult kind of to shift that tanker into a different direction. But I do think we need to name the dragon, and we need to shift the dragon and tame it, or kind of transform it into something else.
I would like to challenge that a little bit. What other systems do we have? We've seen what with the communistic system, with central planning, how that works, and I don't think it has been more sustainable. I'm not saying that the neoliberal system is good. But when I look at other systems, we have so-called social market economy here in Germany. And when I look at big problems which we face, a lot of these problems are due to government failure, political failure. We also have market failure, no doubt. But to just have a strong government and a strong state is unfortunately not sufficient, because we need a state and a government and political system that is in favor of sustainability. And we have too many governments which are strong or sufficiently strong and still not moving towards sustainability. So I don't think that this is a sufficient solution. I fully agree that we need a strong state and a strong public sector. Without that, it's not going to work. But I don't think it's sufficient. We need more. That is not a sufficient requirement. It's not going to work. We see it here in Germany. So if we look at, we have made a lot of progress in some areas, but in other areas we're not making progress at all. And I think overall we have a functioning system, we have a functioning democracy, etc. We are far away from a neoliberal system here in Germany. If you look at the public, for instance, health system, or if you take, as another example, the public health system in the United Kingdom, which is the opposite of a market system, you see lots of failures there. So I don't think that is sufficient. Yeah? And I'm not saying that this is a reason for a neoliberal approach. I'm just saying I don't think that the solution is that easy.
Okay, so let me say, because this discussion reminds me on a book by Henry Mintzberg, Rebalancing Society. So because it seems that you all agree that we need collaboration. And we have three sectors, private, public, and plural. And to me, the key question is, if we all agree on collaboration, but somebody needs to drive collaboration. And which of these sectors, who should take the lead? Is this the government? You said the CEOs or whatever are not forced to change, though that sounds like government. Stefan, from your heard, I think, advocacy for the private sector. I was not sure about you so far, but you can maybe clarify. What
Clearly all.
But who drives? Who is leading that? Who is leading that?
Can I jump in and say, this is exactly the point. We are totally locked in thinking one sector needs to lead, and leadership is something that is a single actor, or those who know me know that I promote the collective leadership approach, and that doesn't mean Chinese parties, everybody does the same and the boss says in which direction we go. No, this is not collective leadership. Collective leadership is if people take up the responsibility in their respective expertise and in their respective field, but they do it with a consciousness about how this actually is a coherent field of action. And then there might be different approaches. So on the one hand, it's absolutely important that the state becomes more strong and the business become more innovative towards sustainability and more courageous, absolutely. And just if you look at the simple minor thing, which is not a minor thing, is the textile or the cocoa value chain. To make this value chain sustainable, which nobody has succeeded yet. And for a reason, because these actors, the NGOs and the farmers and the textile producers and the governments need to work together in order to create a level playing field that makes it possible to set other or different incentives. And I think it's really important to say, no, it's not one actor who needs to take a lead. The government needs to do the job. The businesses need to be really becoming a force for good, otherwise it's not going to work. And this is civil society is extremely necessary, and the academics are necessary. So all of us, we need to do our job.
I think maybe we need to shift our focus more into focusing on getting into action and looking at the solutions. So it's all of us. I fully agree with you on that. At the same time, I do think that businesses indeed can have a large impact, especially here. You mentioned already the textile sector. If you are a business, you have a whole chain, so you actually have influence along many other sectors as well, and even across country boundaries. So there is a huge opportunity for businesses to really accelerate the change we need. And somebody said it's difficult to, you said it, I believe, it's really difficult to change. But at the same time, Paul Hawken again, he wrote a book, Project Drawdown. And if I see what is the number 3 in fighting climate change, it's preventing food waste. The number 4 is a plant-based rich diet. These are things everyone can do. Yeah. Number 1 is refrigerating, cooling. Okay, there we need a sector approach. But I'm not sure whether it's really difficult, because if something is complex, it doesn't mean that it's really difficult. Driving a car is also actually a kind of complex, but when you know how it works, it's actually not that difficult. And there, I think the FSSD comes in.
Yeah. I have to step here in as well and maybe drill a bit deeper, because I've heard a couple of times now it's politics, society, economy. But who is politics, society, economy, if not us? So at the end of the day, I think it just boils down to the individual. Everyone in this room, you decide what you want to do about it. There's a reason why you're here and not enjoying the sun out there. There's a reason why we're sitting here. And we all have our individual driving forces. And we cannot... One thing about the whole sustainability issue, once you are aware of that, you cannot say you don't know that anymore. And once you have that understanding, once we have that understanding, we make hopefully conscious decision. It can be a conscious decision not to go for it. And if that is a majority, then we can probably just do the math and see what's going to happen. But you just mentioned the example that doesn't have to be executives, but whenever we are in a business role, many of us also have a private role. I have children of my own, and they are my driving force. And we are just in the middle of experiencing what's going on. There's so much more than just climate change and how much an individual can make a difference. I mean, Greta just proves it. She gets everyone involved. It had an impact on the European elections. So if it is about changing the system, let's start with us and really embrace change and go for it. And yes, and then it ends up at the supermarket. And maybe not flying on holidays twice a year, maybe just once, and pay for the carbon offset or whatever. But just get going. These were just my 2 cents.
I wonder whether research has an answer to that, because you mentioned some failures, government and market. And is there a tendency where you could justify that there is one of these sectors better positioned to lead than another one? Maybe we go this direction.
I think it depends on who you ask and which discipline that person comes from. I don't think there's this one answer, but that's exactly the reason why sustainability research has engaged so much in transdisciplinary research, not only interdisciplinary research, because you need people with different bodies of knowledge and also people from practice who try to implement it and show what works and what doesn't work. And I really think that single actors can make a difference, no matter where they are, whether they're in politics, in civil society, or in a company. Greta is one example of that. But in the end, how can they make a difference? I think mostly they make a difference by forming an alliance or a network or a movement. So they don't make the difference alone, but they are able to engage others and to motivate them to make a difference. And if you emphasize individuals, I think that's one possibility. One can also take different perspectives, but then we have to go into psychology also. And there's quite interesting, if you look into the area of sustainability-oriented psychology, environmental psychology, etc., then what I read in that literature is that in tendency most people, the vast majority of people, are reluctant to change. You have certain habits, you have certain customs where you have you feel safe in doing and repeating that. And of course, when we ask these people, when we want these people to change, then it always means changing from something safe or where you perceive to be safe to something where you have uncertainty and you don't know what it will mean. And so you need strong arguments, and these arguments do not have to be rational arguments, but they can be emotional arguments, they can be social pressures, positive social incentives, etc. But then we have to go into that area and also think of what can lead to individual change. To give you an example, I mean, I'm very impressed with Florian, what he is building up here and the conference, etc. We're all sustainability oriented, we all know it here. The juices here are not organic. Why are they not organic? I'm sure, Florian, you pass that on to somebody to arrange that. We're a sustainability conference and the drinks are not organic. Now you can say, well, what does that matter compared to the traveling, and here we have a compensation, etc. But it shows how difficult it is to be consequent, and that everybody thinks in these terms for every decision. And I think that's also something we just have to face until we internalize sustainability in every area. That means so much change to what our habits and customs. This just is a challenge.
And therefore, I think it's a lot about wording. Because if we talk about sustainability, there's still this assumption. Also, I hear it here, that it's not in line with what business needs. But you see, for example, the term circular economy has attracted a vast amount of other companies who were not yet into sustainability, but they saw the potential of circular economy thinking. And so maybe we have to come up with newer words. You have regenerative, which might be an angle, and try to show and share whether the individual or the company can be successful by focusing on that, because it's not or, it can be and, and that's something I like to emphasize. But maybe you have...
No, and I think that's well in line. I would say sustainability is not tangible enough. It doesn't hurt us. People are and humans are very quick in changing when you feel a pain. When something is missing that you really want, you're aspiring that, you want to go for it. That's where people start changing. In order to change behaviors, really understanding climate change, yeah? That's not tangible to me as an individual. I think that's one of the challenges we face. So I'm not positive that we will change enough people quickly enough to solve the issues we have up front. On the academic sector, I would say the academic sector has done a great job on the climate change topic. We do have a 1.5 degree, 2 degree target, whatever you bank for. It's not about science anymore. Yeah? There is 90% of scientists and people across the world who think there is a target, there's a limit. So the question is, how do we scale this up quickly enough? Whether it's 1.45 or whether it's 450 gigatons that's left or 420, doesn't matter. Now the question is really, how do we get this scaled? I think the individuals, yes, we can all contribute to this. The next generation clearly, or the youngest generation clearly demonstrate how you create movements. The last elections were right tendency. But the question is, if you look at it, not only in Germany, but across Europe, who's making policies? Who's leading business right now? Those are the people who have the mindset that you mentioned earlier before, rightfully. And I think the question to all of us should be, how do we push these guys over the finish line? There's a few things, yeah? Changing the system takes too long, but the neoliberalism still thinks in costs. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't even want to go into that argument, because I think we're all fully aligned on your thinking. But externalities have a cost. If we talk about a carbon tax, not 25 euros, but like other provinces or other states do, California 50, Switzerland, Sweden. If we now talk about 80, I was in a CEO meeting last week where we actually said 200 euros per ton. The CEO stood up and said, you don't really believe that, do you? It's going to be 500, 600, 700 if you think 10, 15 years from now. They know it. There are solutions.
So they should act,
that.
so why don't they?
Well, the problem is they are not... I don't want to...
Just
they
curious.
are not incentivized, period. And that's the old system in which we still think. The coal discussion, we think about jobs being lost, yeah? It's ridiculous. If you look at how many jobs are being created in the renewable sector, how many jobs we've lost because we didn't do a structural change quick enough in order to use our technologies here. It's ridiculous to have those discussions, but that's the mindset people are still caught in. Yeah? The whole discussion on transport and mobility, we have those solutions. There are e-cars on the road. Less than 1% of cars being sold is e. In Germany, obviously, the lobbyists do also a good job that we don't increase and scale that quickly enough. Why don't we scale the hybrid solutions? Yeah, the whole fuel cell discussions. There are buses on the road in Germany, in Hamburg, and Munich that are being tested. We have those solutions, yet we lack the capability of scaling those. So I would say it's to us as individuals to really push the decision makers and those who can faster and quicker over the line. Obviously do our fair share, but to me it's really the question, how do you set a framework which forces the solution providers to act? And I think that's where we lack. I mean, circular economy is a great idea. European Union within less than 6 months went ahead, minimum recycled content in PET bottles. Obviously an easy start, and we do have the amount, but believe me, in the boardrooms, businesses, even for shampoo bottles, for other type of packaging, go nuts on securing recycled content right now because they know it's going to be a matter of time, 2, 3, 4 years until their product will have minimum recycled content. Business can find those solutions, but it needs to be pushed in order to incentivize to do so. And if we talk about 15, 20, 30 years, Yes, let's talk about our societal model like you mentioned. If we need to fight climate change, we only have 5 years left to scale those solutions.
Okay, so we're in a premium business school. Imagine we have some CEOs sitting here.
Yeah.
Let's say some of these CEOs says, okay, understood, everything is clear, I buy in, I need to do something, and next week I have a meeting with my executive leadership team. Give me one key topic I should put on my agenda for next week. What would you tell them?
It's very, very simply. If you're already at that level that you know you have
you
a
want,
problem,
you want to,
if you're already at that point where you've identified it makes sense to move, then you're already halfway there. And then it's very simple. Lead, lead, lead. I mean, as in the studies that you mentioned with MIT, but also with other organizations, it clearly shows organizations move if there's clear top-down guidance. If Paul Polman goes ahead for Unilever, it takes 3, 4, 5 years to trickle down through the organization. But he meant it. He led through. He took these elements into investment decisions. He asked for the investment proposals. What is my footprint on this? It actually comes down to those guys leading through and not only talking.
Okay, so leading through,
Yes.
what would you say? One recommendation?
Create space at the bottom as well.
Create space at the bottom to make a difference.
Yes,
Yeah? Freedom of decision.
That people feel, I think in English you say, give people permission to act, because sometimes few people feel that they don't have the permission. So.
Okay, this is both. It sounds company-oriented, yeah? Yes. So therefore, I want to hand over to Petra.
The one recommendation that I would give is get together with other CEOs, create global alliance like the Banking on Values or the Plastic Alliance or whatever alliance, and together with businesses push governments into setting better frameworks.
Rüdiger?
I do not really have anything to add to this fantastic statements. I would fully agree to what you guys said.
Okay.
I would also agree with everything. In addition, I would say that everybody can think about what are your main capabilities, your strengths, and how can you relate that to sustainability? And then start there, because that can be the area where you can contribute most. So for somebody, it might be in the educational area, for somebody else, it might be in the business sector or in the NGO sector or in the government. So try to find for yourself where is your area of the highest action potential.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions. I need quick answers, because afterwards I would like to open up for questions before we leave to the boat tour. And the first one is a question I sometimes get, and that's the question: imagine you get 5 million and you have 3 years' time. $5 million, euros, whatever, Swiss franc. And you have 3 years' time. What would you personally, so it's not about CEOs or anything, it's you personally do with that money in 3 years where you believe that would give you a big lever or a big impact?
Thomas, I'm only going to tell you because I know exactly what I would do if you get me the 5 million. So what I would do, and kind of make sure you're sitting. What I would do, I would spend the 5 million to do a research by female economists around all the approaches that currently exist, because there are a lot, from circular economy to regenerative economy, well-being economy, and extract a new paradigm, a new narrative. And then I would spend the rest of the million to get more millions, and to make sure that there is a female transformation network. Sorry guys, we supported you in doing a lot of nonsense in the last 50 years, and I think we as women have now to take the responsibility for kind of tidying up the mess. So I would spend the rest to get a female transformation network going. All business schools, all universities, all businesses, all managers kind of really get a very strong network going, and make sure that in every institution this new narrative is being taught, is being lived, is being implemented, create a learning network, and then of course invite the guys to join and help us.
Very good. So imagine I have only 5 million once, yeah, and these are competing concepts. So what is your?
Okay, try to make it fast.
Yeah.
I would issue an RFP, a request for proposal, and I would invite companies to bid on that RFP. And what we would offer is that you get consulting, interim management, coaching, training, advice whatsoever at a ridiculously low price, so it would be sponsored, for a period of 1 year. But here's the catch is we would participate in the success that we will have with starting the transformation journey. And with this tremendous return on investment we're going to get, we will fund other projects. With the great examples that we would then have, we would scale up.
Wonderful. Jean.
I would invest in realizing the number one, so get in the drawdown solutions, which is refrigerants, because that's our biggest possibility to act upon climate change and reversing global warming, is actually to replace the refrigerants we are using now. So invest the 5 million in getting the sector to change that.
So you use the project drawdown as a prioritization,
Yes.
you take the big ones and
okay,
you go
for
for
5
that.
million, I think I can solve the number one.
Okay.
I hope.
I'm afraid I have a very similar idea as you, that I would invite people to make proposals, organizations to make proposals, and then to support them in realizing it. I think that the communication of these projects, which are then selected, would be the incentive then for them to do it and to scale.
Alex?
As I don't want to compete with all the innovation accelerators, and we have a lot of them already going, I would pick one person that I believe can drive the change from top, would finance the election campaign, for example, for Greta to become Minister of Economy within Germany, to really showcase it's feasible and just to push the solutions to limits.
Wonderful. Wonderful examples. I would create something like not Fridays for Future, but Leaders for Future. We try to create like a corporate activism, which is best practice sharing, mentoring, like Paul Polman and Danone CEO and others who join forces, and everybody can join the club and they share best practice and help each other. So systemic impact. Yeah, that would be maybe
Create a corporate activism.
Exactly, corporate activism, and maybe we could get Larry Fink to join, and I don't know, there are potential candidates for that. Yeah, I think that's I would go for. Yeah. Okay, last round. One quick statement, and I would like you to give one recommendation to this group. So this is not a group of CEO, but a group of researchers, scientists. One recommendation, Peter, if you want, only to the female researchers in this room, or to both, or different? Your call.
So this goes to men and women. Please focus the research on bringing the different new approaches to a new economy together and see what are the difference, what are the principles behind that, and really do PhDs and research so that there's more and more integrated research that looks not at circular or at regenerative or at well-being, but brings it together. That would also support my network. And secondly, really continue what you're doing now, because I've seen kind of the different research agendas that came out during the last 2 days, and look at what works and be really collaborative with the practice and see what are the technologies, what are the approaches, what are the business models, kind of initial step or, other approaches that work, and give the evidence that it works.
Yeah, my answer is a little bit influenced from two things. One is I was participating in the World Circular Economy Forum 2 weeks ago in Helsinki, and the experiences I made there. And then obviously it's depending on the FSSD, the Framework for Strategic Sustainability Development. And with that in mind, my recommendation would be don't focus on symptoms, but on the root causes. And if I just elaborate that very quickly just with ecological sustainability, the whole thing, climate change, land degradation, ozone layer, whatever you have, all the planetary boundaries, it all boils down to three things we do in a systematic way. We take material from the Earth crust and introduce that in the biosphere in a systematic way. Second, We introduce substances into the biosphere which are man-made and the biosphere cannot process. And third is, we prevent the biosphere systematically from running in cycles. These are the three root causes for unsustainability.
So, the root causes are known. I think we know the symptoms, we know the problems. We actually also know all the solutions. So please get people into action. Focus on that. That's the only thing we need.
Which would lead over that research should be transdisciplinary, involving practitioners and concrete cases, because then the results and the analysis are also much more valuable with regard to creating change.
Finally.
I would actually agree. Try to find 10 to 15 people, use them as accelerators and convince them to stop doing bad things, purchasing poor products, buying poor services tomorrow, and let's really try to scale it personally.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for your attention, and see you later.